Henry's soul food.
You know I like it.
Soul food. Henry's soul food.
Know we need it.
Soul food. Henry's soul food.
Hit me.
Home of the sweet potato pie. Even the keenest taste buds will tell you. The best food on the planet. Large enough to serve you and small enough to know you. So get to Henry's at 5431 Indian Head Highway, Oxon Hill, Maryland, or give us a call at 301-749-6856.
Soul food. Henry's soul food.
What we need.
Soul food. Henry's soul food.
Welcome to the Armstrong Williams Show, brought to you by Golden Crust Bakery, the fastest growing Caribbean-owned franchise in the United States. Golden Crust is committed to the delivery of quality food and excellent customer service. Visit them today at goldencrustbakery.com. Armstrong. Yeah, baby. Hello, everybody. Oh, I feel good today. Lowell Ponte, how are you today, brother?
Good. I'm doing well.
Armstrong,
I feel
it's so
good
wonderful
too,
to be back with you.
Now, I say hello to Lowell Ponte, and Logan starts talking also. Okay.
Well, that's okay.
Let me stop my man. Let me start over Lowell, because Logan feels this is his home, and you know, family you got to be sensitive with. So let me say hello to family first, and then I'm going to come back to you. Hello, Logan.
Hello, Armstrong. How you doing?
My apologies, brother.
Okay.
I didn't mean to offend my brother.
No, you did. You know, Armstrong, it's hard for you to offend me because I know you so well. I know your intentions. So.
And my intentions are good.
They are.
Yeah.
Now go take care of your guest.
Okay, now let me introduce my guest again. Lowell Ponte, brother, welcome back to the show.
Hey, it is great. Isn't that what they pave the road to a place way down there? It is great to be with you. Hey, Abba must pop 'em.
Oh, we have a new
pope.
Have
a new pope.
What are your thoughts on the new pope? Let's talk about that first.
Yeah, I mean, here we have this perfectly crafted being of Italian ancestry, like 40% of the people in Argentina, and yet born and raised in Argentina. Cardinal Bergoglio, if that's how you say it, is the new Pope Francis. This is a man who worked with Cardinal Ratzinger, who became Pope Benedict XVI, fighting against liberation theology in South America, this attempt to create a kind of Marxism disguised as Catholicism. He was a major crusader against that, which is wonderful. You and I, Armstrong, can probably remember when, I think it was Gary Becker, made the famous statement that communism was now so discredited worldwide that by 2050 there would only be 2 true believing communists left in the world, and they would be 2 nuns in Brazil.
Wow, yes, that's right.
Well, thanks to the new Pope and his crusade against liberation theology, communism did not take over Catholicism in Latin America. So we should be thankful for that. Mind you, communism did something good for Christianity, and that is it largely reunited Christendom. It created a common enemy that brought Protestants and Catholics and Orthodox Christians back together to a large degree. And that has been all to the good.
You know, Francis, as our guest was saying, is the first pope who had been the Archbishop during this era, is the first one not born in Europe in more than 1,000 years since Columbus slided in the New World. And so in also choosing him, the Cardinal sends a very powerful message that the future of the church lies in the global South, home to the bulk of the world's Catholics, Logan.
Well, that is very interesting and very significant, perhaps more significant than the election of any other pope in a very, very long time. I'm going to tell you, with all due respect to your views of the Cardinal, and I have a lot of respect for the Cardinal, I'm disappointed that they would choose such an old man. This Cardinal is 76 years old. The modern world has passed him by.
Well, Logan, when have they not chosen an old man?
Well, they always choose old men, and that's the problem with the Catholic Church.
They don't want them to govern too long. They want to make sure they find a way to limit the influence and the power they can have. So
but the problem is when you pick an old man, especially in this environment today, you're getting somebody who's living in the past. The fight today is not communism of the post-war era and the Cold War era. There are different issues today that the Church has to address. I don't know this Pope's ideology, and I can't speak to it, but I would hope that the Catholic Church would choose somebody who's in tune with the younger people of the Church, that finds a way of communicating with the young people of the Church. And it's like when I was a kid, all the Catholic masses were in Latin. And probably the most important thing they did is to change the Mass and put it into vernacular so that, the regular people could understand it. It just wasn't the people who were, studying Latin and understood patristics, which is the study of the Church Latin. And the Church has to find a way of communicating with young people to spread some very good values, but they have to reevaluate those values, looking at the Scripture, looking at our society today, and saying, what's the Church going to look like in the middle part of the 21st century?
Well, now, wasn't it all...
Let me raise this. Let me raise this. Let's talk about some of the challenges that this Pope is going to face. There is a tremendous priest shortage and growing competition from evangelical churches in the Southern Hemisphere, and you cannot ignore the sexual abuse crisis that has undermined the Church's moral authority in the West, and to the difficulties governing the Vatican itself.
Well, there is a famous story. Remember, the power of the Catholic Church has always been that it has changed just enough. I mean, when we talk about going to a normal vocabulary for people, for the liturgy and so on, and going away from Latin, that's something Protestantism did 500 years ago. So in a sense, the Catholic Church is catching up with elements of Protestantism now, but is remaining relevant. There's a famous story that a pagan from Europe became a tremendous zealot for the Church, and then he said to the Church Fathers, I want to visit Rome. It's very important to me. He was a leader of his people, and therefore they didn't exactly want to refuse him, but they knew what would happen if he saw what Rome was really like. He nevertheless visited Rome. He came back, and to their surprise, he was more enthusiastic for the Church than ever before. And finally, one of them said to him, But didn't you see all the corruption, the bribe-taking, the lies, the evil there? And he said, of course I did. But any church that can survive that must really be the Church of God. And I suspect that is how a lot of people have viewed the Catholic Church all along. It's undergone tremendous changes, anti-popes, all kinds of odd things, and yet it's still here. And as you indicated, it is dying in places like Europe, but it is growing in places like Africa, where, for example, in Nigeria, there's an enormous religious war now between Islam and Catholicism going on, in a country that supplies about 10% of all of America's imported oil in Nigeria. And of course, that battle is going on in Latin America, too. Some would see this as a sign that they're afraid Protestantism or other faiths are making too many inroads into Latin America.
Well, I would say that the Church is dead in Europe, not dying. It's dead. It's dying here, and you can at least save the Church here. But one of the things you have to do is to find a way of getting American priests. Most of the Catholics that I know today go to churches where they have foreign priests, not American-born priests. It's like they have missionaries from another culture here, as opposed to, as short as 25 years ago, the parish priest were, for the most part, American-born. You can't. It's hard to get a young American Catholic to go into the priesthood. And on the other hand, Protestants have an excess supply of priests, not only because priests can get married, but because they accept women as priests. So I think the church, if it's going to communicate and get into the 21st century, it's really got to look at the requirements of the priesthood.
There's a little footnote we should probably add to that, and that is at any given moment, there are in the world roughly 60 to 70 married Catholic priests. People seem to forget that. But if you are a Lutheran minister, if you're an Episcopal minister or whatever, and you decide to convert to the Catholic Church, the Catholic Church has for centuries had a special provision where you are allowed to keep your wife, you are allowed to keep your family, and yet become a Catholic priest. And because they view this as so important to converting important leaders of other religions.
Well, the other thing that's important to recognize is that most priests were married before about the 12th century. And it was only in the 12th century, or so, thereabouts, I may be a century off, where the Catholic priests were prohibited from getting married.
There long has been this argument that...
Hold that point there, Lowell. We're coming back. Lowell Ponte, Logan Delany. We're going to talk a little finances and jobs with Lowe's when we come back. Don't go away.
Armstrong Williams returns.
Say bye-bye burgers, pass on the pizza, forget the francs. Anytime is party time. Discover Golden Crust's authentic Jamaican-style patties. Beef, chicken, vegetables, soya, spinach, and shrimp. Feast on our great taste sensations. Jerk chicken, oxtail, sliced fish, and much more. Savor the taste of the Caribbean. Only at a Golden Crust near you. A family tradition since 1949. GoldenCrustBakery.com.
For more information on the Armstrong Williams Show, please visit our new website at www.rightsidewire.com. There you can find his syndicated column archive, view live streams, and get your favorite conservative pundits' views on the current issues affecting the American people. From building wealth to foreign policy, stay connected with Armstrong Williams and his colleagues at the all-new www.rightsidewire.com.
Hi, this is Armstrong Williams. What does it mean to be conservative? Freedom of speech, freedom of free enterprise, freedom of assembly, less government, less taxes. As a matter of fact, a flat tax. Everyone should pay proportional tax. It doesn't matter whether you make $100 million or $10,000. Everyone should pay their 10%. Everyone should have something at stake in this American economy. I'm Armstrong Williams expressing what we mean by conservative traditional value.
Does your school, team, church, or charity need a new fundraiser? Do you need to work out of your home or part-time? Are you a small business that can use an additional revenue stream? Then you need Yellow Llama. Do you need affordable web services or tools to enhance your existing business? Are you a graphic artist who wants to create a revenue stream with your art but not get ripped off? Then go to www.yellowllama.com.
America must change course if we hope to survive and save the American dream for our children and grandchildren. How do we fix Social Security and Medicare? How do we cut government spending? How do we reform health care? How do we simplify the tax code? The Heritage Foundation has a bold plan that tackles these tough problems using common sense solutions that leave partisan politics on the sidelines. Find out how we can save the American dream at savingthedream.org, paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
Hi, this is Armstrong Williams. with an opportunity to own a piece of paradise in Nassau, Bahamas. Spectacular land prices, 8,000 square feet, 20,000 square feet lot, affordable prices, hilltop properties with views of the magnificent sea. Just call 242-677-3120 or 3121 or go to info@rightsidewire.com and leave your information.
Where heads of state, sports, entertainment, and political celebrities meet. You're listening to Armstrong Williams.
And welcome back to the Armstrong Williams Show with our guest, Lowell Ponte, and always Logan Delany. Lowell, please continue your point as we were going to break.
Well, we were talking about celibacy, and there has long been this tradition that one of the challenges for Christendom was that for a few centuries during the Middle Ages, priests and monks, which was basically the only place you could go if you were an ordinary person who loved scholarship, learning, intellect, that was the profession you could be in and enjoy books. Well, they were discouraged from marriage. They were discouraged from having children. That began to come in around the 4th century A.D. It's true, Peter, the first pope, was married, obviously, and that tradition held for a few centuries. But by the 4th century, there was a growing tradition of celibacy and sexual abstinence among Catholic priests. So it was assumed that the challenge the church then faced is the smartest people were weeded out of the Christian gene pool, while at the same time in the Jewish community, the smartest guy was usually the rabbi, and he was encouraged to have as many children as possible. In fact, other Jewish congregants would take food out of their own children's mouths to make sure the rabbi's kids were fed. And so you had an amplification of smart genes, if you want to call them that, in the Jewish community, and you had a diminution of smart genes in the Christian community. And so here we are today, and you mentioned jobs as an issue. I mean, we have a stock market that appears to be rebounding. This is why I originally was coming on the show. But it's coming on because the Fed has promised to continue pumping out money at a rate of $85 billion a month, the amount of the whole sequester in 2013. The Fed manufactures out of thin air every month and dumps into the economy. So the stock investors, the speculators, now know the casino is going to stay open probably until at least 2015. There's plenty of time to make money, and the world remains awash in that kind of cheap, easy money. Meanwhile, the real economy isn't doing all that well. We were told that Obama should be rejoicing because last Friday the new jobs report said that unemployment had dropped to 7.7%, the lowest since December 2008. Everything was just peachy, and then people looked closer. First, Obama didn't celebrate because he said the sequester that began March 1st may cost 700,000 jobs. So even if the job news were really good, it would not last. Or if it did, it would give people an incentive to cut government even more, something Mr. Obama doesn't really want. When you look closely, though, at the devil in the details of the jobs number, we supposedly added 236,000 jobs, most of them hamburger flipper jobs, by the way, in February. However, the number who stopped looking for a job and were dropped out of the numbers were 60,000 more, 296,000 people. The workforce participation rate in February plummeted to 63.5%. That's the lowest proportion of working-age Americans who have jobs in 31 years. The number of long-term unemployed increased by 90,000 in February. It's now above 40%, and most of those people are never going to find the kind of jobs they lost. The number that includes people who have part-time jobs, and a part-time job, by the way, can mean working one day a month, who have those kinds of jobs but need a full-time job, remains above 14.3%. So it's still huge. It's doubled, nearly double the number they're talking about for unemployment in the country. And of course, African-American unemployment has gone up dramatically under Barack Obama. He has been a disaster for the African-American community employment. So it's interesting. We've seen more than 3 million people move to Social Security disability, further draining Social Security. They're not counted as unemployed anymore. And Mr. Obama's made it possible for you just to walk into a doctor and say, "Doc, I hear voices in my head," and you can get a lifelong disability check. that you don't have to worry about running out like an unemployment check. We also have the game, I know we've discussed this before, that Mr. Obama played last summer during the election season. Remember, he said, I'm going to end Bill Clinton's workfare. People on welfare, and their units can now get waivers. They don't have to apply for work anymore. And everybody said, this is Barack Obama making people dependent on government again. And indeed he is. I mean, the welfare rolls fell by half under Bill Clinton's workfare. But the real intent is the rules are such that if you stop looking for work for 4 weeks, you're no longer counted as unemployed. You just vanish from the rolls. And so guess what? When they said to all the people on welfare, you don't have to apply for a job anymore, that meant after 4 weeks, they vanished. And we predicted at the time, Craig Smith and I, that what this would mean is unemployment just before the election would drop from the 8% range where it had been during Obama's whole presidency into the 7% range. And it did. And this was heralded by Barack Obama as the fact that his economic policy was working, that we were saved. The only problem is not a single new job needed to be found for that to happen. It was all gimmickry. And that's what's going on today. We still see that kind of gimmickry affecting the jobs numbers. By the way, we analyze a lot of this, as you know, Armstrong, in our new book.
Let me give Logan a chance to respond. Logan, respond to what he's saying.
Well, let me respond to his first comment. I like this man when he made the politically incorrect statement of saying that that the Jews and the Christians had a sort of a biological Darwinian event that occurred in the 4th century. I've never heard it put that way, but it was just, I think that's just an interesting observation. Coming down to today, where we are and the unemployment issues, I could not agree more with Lowell and his analysis of the unemployment numbers. I think there's another issue going on, which I think he may eventually get into in terms of what's happening with the money supply, and that there is only one way that this is going to have an impact on America. There's been a lot of money that's been printed over the last 4 or 5 years to basically cover the deficit. Now, you can only print money for so long before it really comes back to bite us and we have inflation. And when you combine high real unemployment and you combine that with inflation, that is a very toxic mix. Now, one other thing that I think people really don't realize is that the Bernanke, who's been the architect of easy money and low interest rates over the last 5 or 6 years, has created an unintended consequence. And the unintended consequence is that low interest rates cause unemployment. And you say, wait, how does that cause unemployment? You know, that low interest rates encourages people to spend money to buy homes and build construction and to buy machinery and equipment. And yes, that is true. But when you're talking about building machinery and equipment, what that causes is that it makes machinery and equipment relatively cheap. And because it's relatively cheap, it's cheaper to add new capital equipment rather than to add new jobs. In other words, capital substitutes for jobs and eliminates jobs. So that's fact number one. Secondly, it creates bubbles, and bubbles like in the building trades, where you build a lot of homes and you build until you create a bubble, and then all those people in construction, when the bubble bursts, lose their jobs. And it takes several years. It could take 5 years before the market reaches equilibrium again and those people are rehired. So it really does have an unintended consequence, that is low interest rates have an unintended consequence of creating and contributing to unemployment.
Well, low interest rates only mean something to you or me if we're able to borrow at those rates. And what a lot of potential homeowners have discovered is the rates are low, but the banks aren't really lending, at least not lending to them. The banks will lend to the government because the government can print all the money it needs. And so a lot of the lending potential in the marketplace has gone back to the government to borrow, not to you or me. And that's needed, frankly, because our government is now borrowing more than 41 cents out of every dollar it spends.
Well, not only
borrowing
that,
at the rate of $58,000 every second just to keep the government going. By the way, just before we run out of time here, I don't know, are you able to keep me over into the next half hour?
Yes.
Oh, okay. But I would like to just say to people, Craig Smith and I are writing a series of 12 books to explain all of this. Our current book, we'd be happy to give 1,000 of your listeners absolutely free and postpaid. Won't cost them a penny. It's a 283-page book. It costs $20 at the bookstore. But we're just trying to arm people with information and give them a survival guide in the market we have today so they can see all the tricks that are being played on them. And those tricks are many. The book is called The Great Debasement, The 100-Year Dying of the Dollar, and How to Get America's Money Back. And if people would like a free copy, just call us at a toll-free number, 800-630-1494, and we'll be happy to give you a book. Just leave your name and number. We'll get back to you, 800-630-1494. It's a little like Columbus, but it isn't quite 1492. It's 800-630-1494. Our previous book was called The Inflation Deception in this series, and we're explaining how the government uses inflation as a way of taxing people. See, the game the government plays is a little like this, and your co-host, Armstrong, is quite right. That is, the government plays some very exotic games here, but there are things the government itself can't do. For example, Congress and the President can't get together and say, we're repealing the law of gravity. I wish they could. I wouldn't have to diet as much. And there's another law they can't repeal, and that's the law of supply and demand.
We're coming back, and our phone lines are open. This is fascinating. Lowell Ponte, why economic experts aren't high on the new jobless low. Experts in the real numbers are not so rosy. And Logan Delany, we'll be back.
Armstrong Williams returns in a moment.
For more information on the Armstrong Williams Show, please visit our new website at www.rightsidewire.com. There you can find his syndicated column archive, view live streams, and get your favorite conservative pundits' views on the current issues affecting the American people. From building wealth to foreign policy, stay connected with Armstrong Williams and his colleagues at the all-new www.rightsidewire.com.
Life is full of unexpected changes. Everyone has potential to do wrong. And when they choose to do it, contact the Bucksell Group for your private investigation needs. TheBucksellGroup.com or by phone at 202-243-9746. Whether there's an instance of a cheating spouse, child custody, process service, or security, don't continue suspecting. Get closure so that you can move on with your life. Visit TheBucksellGroup.com now or call 202-243-9746. If you think it's happening, it probably is.
To travelers along the road of life who have fallen asleep at the wheel, to the many who woke up in time to avert disaster and get back on the righteous path. For the ones who crashed and survived and now adhere vigilantly to a virtuous and righteous path. Finally, Armstrong Williams' much-anticipated new book, Reawakening Virtues, gives his insights into these daily challenges and much more. Reawakening Virtues is available in bookstores and at Amazon.com.
Join the millions of Americans who pursue one of our country's finest traditions, from hunting to sport shooting. Since 1871, the NRA has grown as a service organization involved in all aspects of shooting sports and is a proud defender of the Bill of Rights. Join today to begin taking advantage of exclusive membership offers and discounts, including up to $25,000 in insurance coverage. Contact the NRA today. Call 1-800-672-3888 or visit nra.org.
Most Americans simply have never been taught the basics of money management, let alone how to secure their financial future. But there is hope. Financial Education and Literacy Advisors, also known as FELA, does what others don't. FELA teaches financial education. If you'd like more information about providing a financial wellness program for your employees, or a credit-bearing college course in personal finance, or other valuable programs, please visit myfela.com. That's myfela.com, or send an email to info@myfela.com.
Elder chicks is an exciting part of the fastest growing segment of the population. Women in their 70s, 80s, and older who are mastering the art of a senior life. We're no longer unseen and unheard. We're providing role models for each other and the baby boomers who are fast approaching retirement. Join our virtual community. Hit www.elderchicks.com on your computer keyboard.
Where heads of state, sports, entertainment, and political celebrities meet. You're listening to Armstrong Williams.
And welcome back to the broadcast with Lowell Ponte, Logan Delany, and Michael Cutler will join us shortly. So, Lowell and Logan, what is the solution, man?
Well, ultimately, the solution is to get back to honest money, the kind of money the founders, the framers, wrote into the Constitution. They'd had their experience with cheap paper money, and it became not worth a continental. They tried to run the revolution on it because they didn't have enough gold and silver. Once they established a real government, they realized it had to run on real money that people could trust, that people could rely on. When you have money that can just be printed willy-nilly by the politicians, as we've had since 1913, you wind up with, which is 100 years ago when the progressives took over. In 1 year, 1913, they gave us the income tax and the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve was chartered, it says right at the top of its own enabling legislation, to furnish an elastic currency, a stretchable money to replace that nasty old solid gold-backed currency that the politicians were therefore not free to print all they wanted of. And back then, the progressives, whether it was Teddy Roosevelt, who wanted money to build an infinite warfare state, or Woodrow Wilson, who wanted money to build an infinite welfare state, either way, the progressives wanted to have limitless money, and they got it, but to get there, they had to gradually push the gold standard off the cliff and get rid of it, which they finally did under FDR. The last thin vestige of the gold standard was done away with by Richard Nixon in August 1971, and since he did that, what you could buy for $1 in 1971 today costs more than $5.65. I mean, the paper dollar is just evaporating around us. But the politicians have to pretend it isn't. They have to hold interest rates down artificially low. The Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke has admitted that we need high unemployment, because if we didn't have high unemployment, wages would begin to go up. Companies would have to compete more without a big pool of unemployed people to draw from. And that would cause inflation, and the inflation would then disintegrate the whole system. So they're playing a very elaborate game. When they hold interest rates down, they do a thing called financial repression, which means if you or I do what we were taught to do as little kids, and we go to the bank and we put our money in a savings account, you lose money every day. Your money's in that savings account because you're being paid less in interest than you're losing in inflation. The interest rate is deliberately kept below the inflation rate. And that means everybody trying to save money gets shafted. And they do that precisely because they want people to have to gamble with their money. Instead of putting your money in the bank, you have to take it to the stock market and wager on speculator stocks. They're doing that deliberately. They're forcing people into the stock market. But the stock market is now just a big casino. It has nothing to do with the actual health of the economy.
Logan?
Well, I got couple of comments here, and to put it in perspective of what's happened to the dollar. Between about 1800, right after our independence and the signing of the Constitution, the dollar went in value, increased, or rather decreased in value about 7%. In other words, what a dollar could buy in 1800 took about 93 cents in 1913. That's a little over 100 years. Today, between 1913 and 2013, a dollar is worth a nickel. In other words, it takes $20 today to buy what a dollar bought 100 years ago. I mean, that's what's happened to inflation. And that's what's come about with the Federal Reserve that's supposed to protect our money supply. That's the first point I want to make. And I thought it was a good point that Lowell was making.
Yeah, they've effectively stolen about $222 trillion from the American people, and by some measures, a dollar today is worth only about 2 cents of a 1913 dollar. But you're essentially right.
Okay. The other point that he was making in terms of putting money into the bank is that we've created an incredible moral hazard. The moral hazard is, for generations, our society has valued the virtue of thrift. You know, you learned as a kid, at least I learned as a kid, that you always took a certain amount of your money and you put it in the bank. I had one of these little savings cards and one of these bank cards, and once a week I put, a couple of nickels or dimes into the bank. That tells you how long ago. That's when a dime was worth something. And before you knew it, by the end of a year, I had $50, and I could watch it grow in my passbook savings. Today, and in those days, the interest rate, I thought the interest rate was low in those days. It was about 4%. Today, the interest rate is about 20 basis points on a savings account. 20 basis points is 0.2%. So that means if you put $100 into the bank, at the end of the year, you've made a grand amount of 20 cents. 20 cents.
And then the government comes and taxes you on that 20 cents as if it were.
That's right. So then you got, you got 10 cents. So what we've done is we've created a moral hazard, which says you have to be a fool to save money today and put your money in the bank. There is,
John Maynard Keynes would be thrilled by that, because Keynes created the famous expression, the paradox of thrift. That is, in theory, you'd think thrift is good, but under Keynesian economics, as we run with today in the government, savings is bad. When people save money, that slows the economy down. What they want to do is force people to spend as much money as possible to create a Keynesian multiplier effect, so that every dollar you give to a poor person who has to spend it, for example, creates the equivalent of $1.50 in acceleration through the economy because it's being spent so fast. That we've now found is completely false. It doesn't really work. They've spent $6 trillion trying to create Keynesian stimulus in the economy. That is, they've created $6 trillion out of thin air, in effect, and taken it out of the active economy and put it into stimulus. And what has it produced? For every dollar they invested, it produced about 23 cents worth of growth. That is, it actually...
Why should that be surprising? Because anybody who knows anything about the government, has had any experience with any government organization, knows that they spend their own money much better than the government spends their money. I mean, when you buy a toilet seat, okay, you go to Home Depot and you spend $10 for a toilet seat, okay? When the federal government goes and buys a toilet seat, they have to spend about $1,000 for a toilet seat.
Yeah,
okay?
What the chief economist for the Federal Reserve Bank in St. Louis found, as we predicted, by the way, in one of our books, the stimulus not only did not stimulate, it created an anti-stimulus. That is, it frightened business people so that they invested less than they would have and hired fewer people than they would have. The stimulus actually slowed the economy down. And I think because, as Milton Friedman famously said, if you put the government in charge of the Sahara Desert, in 5 years you'd have a shortage of sand.
Well, I think, one of my favorite expressions from Milton Friedman is that he was looking at the Chinese who were digging a dam, and they were using shovels to shovel the dirt. And they had a couple of backhoes back there that weren't being used. And he asked the manager, he said, why aren't you using the backhoes? Why are you using all those laborers with shovels? And he said, so we can create jobs. And he said, well, if you want to create jobs, why don't you give them spoons and let them dig with spoons?
It's so true. and this is the kind of economy we're creating now. What frightens me is you look at an example where government went crazy printing money It was in Weimar, Germany, after World War I. Remember, I started to say you can't repeal the law of gravity, and you also can't repeal the law of supply and demand. If you dump twice as much money into people's pockets, all that means is when they go to the supermarket or the gas station, everything's soon going to cost twice as much, because the economy will just adjust to the money supply. And that's what they've found in every advanced economy where Keynesian stimulus has been attempted. Ultimately, it doesn't work. Even Keynes, if he were here today, though, would say, one thing you never do is raise taxes when the economy is down. That's just crazy. So what is President Obama doing? He's demanding we keep raising taxes on the achievers, on the productive. That's the formula for society to commit suicide.
You know, one of the other things that Keynes said is that when you have a good economy, you have to build a surplus. The corollary to using deficit financing to stimulate the economy in bad times is that in good times, you have to have a surplus to fund that. And when was the last time we had a surplus? It was a few years during the Clinton administration, and we can count over the last 100 years, the last probably 150 years, the federal government surpluses on one hand, and you probably don't need all your fingers.
Yeah, well, again, we've created a Keynesian system that discourages people from saving.
Tell our audience how they can reach you.
Well, they can reach me. Well, I suggest you just get the book. Call toll-free 800.
That's what you got to tell them. When we come back, we're going to tell you how to get the book. Michael Cutler will be joining us. Logan is here. Don't go away. We'll be back.
Say bye-bye burgers, pass on the pizza, forget the francs. Anytime is party time. Discover Golden Cross's authentic Jamaican-style patties. Beef, chicken, vegetables, soya, spinach, and shrimp. Feast on our great taste sensations. Jerk chicken, oxtail, sliced fish, and much more. Savor the taste of the Caribbean. Only at a Golden Cross near you. A family tradition since 1949. GoldenCrossBakery.com.
For more information on the Armstrong Williams Show, please visit our new website at www.rightsidewire.com. There you can find his syndicated column archive, view live streams, and get your favorite conservative pundits' views on the current issues affecting the American people. From building wealth to foreign policy, stay connected with Armstrong Williams and his colleagues at the all-new www.rightsidewire.com.
Does your school, team, church, or charity need a new fundraiser? Do you need to work out of your home or part-time? Are you a small business that can use an additional revenue stream? Then you need Yellow Llama. Do you need affordable web services or tools to enhance your existing business? Are you a graphic artist who wants to create a revenue stream with your art but not get ripped off? Then go to www.yellowllama.com.
Anderson Brothers Bank, a family-owned and operated establishment that blends traditional personal service, local market awareness, and advanced technology to meet the financial needs of its customers. Visit abbank.com or call 843-464-6271 to see how they can assist you with your banking needs. Anderson Brothers Bank, celebrating 75 years of community banking, the way it should be. Stability right in your backyard since 1933.
America must change course if we hope to survive and save the American dream for our children and grandchildren. How do we fix Social Security and Medicare? How do we cut government spending? How do we reform health care? How do we simplify the tax code? The Heritage Foundation has a bold plan that tackles these tough problems using common sense solutions that leave partisan politics on the sidelines. Find out how we can save the American dream at savingthedream.org, paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
Join the millions of Americans who pursue one of our country's finest traditions, from hunting to sports shooting. Since 1871, the NRA has grown as a service organization involved in all aspects of shooting sports and is a proud defender of the Bill of Rights. Join today to begin taking advantage of exclusive membership offers and discounts, including up to $25,000 in insurance coverage. Contact the NRA today. Call 1-800-672 888-3888 or visit nra.org.
Where heads of state, sports, entertainment, and political celebrities meet. You're listening to Armstrong Williams.
Michael Cutler, what is going on in the world of immigration?
Hey, Armstrong, thank you so much for having me. We're hearing about the Gang of Eight, and I got to tell you, it is making me have a hissy fit. And it's incredible because we're hearing so much about Senator Rubio from Florida as the new face of the Republican Party. He made a statement, and I have to quote the statement. It was in a UPI report that ran yesterday, and in fact I wrote a commentary for capsweb.org, California's Population Stabilization, where I didn't get into all of this, but part about this Gang of Eight. And here's what he said. Unless the group, meaning the Gang of Eight, designs a visa program that ensures a robust labor force, Rubio told reporters, what you're going to have is people coming into the country illegally or overstaying their visas. So really, it sounds like what Mr. Rubio wants is to make legal what is now illegal, to bring in more foreign workers who will compete unfairly with Americans who can't get jobs. I was listening to your folks that were on with you today. Brilliant conversation. They are right about what we're doing to America's prospects for its own future and Americans' prospects for its future, and especially Americans' minorities. Because we are making it increasingly impossible for Americans to aspire to get meaningful jobs where they can become part of the middle class. We are destroying wages in America. And it's interesting because UPI also said in that same article, and here's a quote, business groups and Silicon Valley companies have pushed for more H-1B visas for software engineers and other high-skilled employees, while labor unions have warned that too many immigrants would undercut qualified Americans seeking high-tech jobs in a weak economy. How in the world does this live up to the role of immigration? Because, those immigration laws, Armstrong, were enacted just for two reasons, to protect innocent lives and to protect the jobs of American workers. What Rubio and others are calling for is antithetical to both of those objectives.
Lowell, what is your perspective on what you're discussing with us throughout the conversation, and how does the immigration issue and how they go forward on...
Well, Armstrong, I grew up in Southern California. I remember as a child growing up in an orange-growing community, every year the braceros would come in. The government had a program where people from Latin America were welcome to come here. They would have green cards. They did not have to worry about the Migros, the immigration authorities seizing them. They didn't have to worry about being cheated out of their pay. They would come, they would work, and then they would go home. But they were not being granted citizenship, and they were certainly not being granted driver's licenses they could use to register to vote. And that was a very workable system at the time. Now, the other challenge is, suppose we let people come here, but simply said, if you come here illegally, you will never be allowed to be a citizen, and you will never be allowed to vote in this country, and you will never be allowed to collect welfare benefits. How many illegals do you think would come? Well, those who had a genuine work ethic, like most of our ancestors did, they would still come. They'd still come for the jobs. But those who are not coming here to work, those who are coming here simply to milk the system. But remember, we now have a country where 49.1% of the households in the U.S. have someone living there who gets a government check. When John Kennedy was president, more than half of every tax dollar went for national defense. Today, 2/3 of every tax dollar go for transfer payments. That is, just taking tax dollars out of Armstrong Williams' pocket so it can be put into the pocket of somebody else the politicians deem more morally deserving of having the fruits of your labor than you are. That's what our system is now built on increasingly.
Logan?
And if you have a country where all people have to do is break in and they'll be allowed to tap into the welfare system, where I think the Center for Immigration Studies says the average family in the U.S. who's come here illegally is receiving about $18,000 more in benefits than they're paying in taxes in the society.
Well, I agree with much of what Lowell says, and but I do. There are some nuances. Okay, first of all, I think anybody that's here illegally, if they want to get citizenship, they have to go back to their own country and get in line. I think we should have permits, work permits, and that don't lead to a green card and don't lead to citizenship, because there are some labor issues that we have to address. And
let me make a point if I can.
No, let me finish.
Good, sure.
One of the things that we have to do is to address the fact that the American education system does not create enough scientists, engineers, mathematicians, and other potential high-tech workers to serve the demand. If you have a business and you need an engineer, you will have a very hard time at any price finding an American to do that. I know I hire engineers, and we just have a very hard time. The second thing is that if you look at American entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, a disproportionate number of those, like 40% of the entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, are foreigners. They are creating jobs for America by bringing their talents here. So I don't want to exclude those people. I agree with the people that say if somebody comes to the United States and they get a degree in physics or engineering or computer science, attach a green card to their diploma. And
I couldn't disagree with you more.
And add value.
I couldn't disagree with you more, and I'll tell you why.
Well, we always disagree when we talk about immigration.
Sure, but that's fine. You have the right to be wrong. I won't stop you. Look, here's the problem. First of all, we do give out work visas. In fact, we admit between legal and temporary work visas, immigrant and non-immigrant workers, more than 150,000 each and every month. If you want incentives for Americans to take jobs, then you have to get to the point of understanding that you have to pay proper wages. My son's a mechanical engineer. There are American engineers who are out of work, but they're being made to compete unfairly with workers from India and other countries who will take a job for $40,000 that traditionally paid $100,000. Now, of course, you don't want to pay $100,000 a year, and I understand that. But
wait, I will tell you, I have trouble finding them at $100,000 a year, finding Americans.
Wait 1 sec. Let me just make a point. The point of the matter is that we have got to look at American workers first and say, what do we need to do to create enough desire within American schools to create the incentives for those careers in the first place? And we're not. American kids are coming out of universities owing more money than some people pay in mortgages. The other problem that we have, and this isn't just a matter of looking for workers, is among the people coming here illegally looking to work are terrorists and criminals. 30% of the inmate population of federal prisons are aliens who shouldn't be here in the first place. And in fact, this Gang of Eight even was arguing whether we should be tracking the entry of temporary visitors. In point of fact, we already gave a $10 billion contract to Accenture. The U.S. government did 10 years ago to create U.S. Visit, which was supposed to track the entry and departure of foreigners, but we didn't, and in part, I believe it's because of the guest worker program. I'm sorry, not the guest worker, the issue of the Chamber of Commerce looking for people to come to America under the Discover America partnership, because this is all about creating revenue streams. Look, we have to have people come to the United States. I'm not talking about sealing the borders. What I am saying is that we need to enforce the law. Rubio's solution, which is a non-solution, is to just let everybody in that wants to work, rather than saying, let's enforce the laws. You don't end drunk driving arrests by raising the blood alcohol level to 2.0 from 0.08. What you're supposed to say is, let's make certain that first and foremost we give American students the first shot at those jobs. Get Americans working, just like you want to protect American lives, you want to protect the American labor force to preserve the middle class. Destroy the middle class, you destroy the United States and the American dream.
Sure, and while you guys are discussing people who are upscale, educated workers, let's not forget that a large percentage of illegals coming into the country are uneducated, low end of the job scale, and the people they hurt most. I see Barack Obama getting 95% of the African-American vote. Well, when he gave 1 million work permits to illegals, who do you think lost their jobs because of those work permits? It was African-Americans competing down at the low end of the scale. So once again, Barack Obama has been a disaster for African-Americans.
And we see that down here in the South, where there are a lot of jobs, especially in construction, where you used to have a lot of African Americans taking those jobs. And over the past 20 or 30 years, you've seen an increasing number of Hispanics. And I can't tell you whether they're legal or illegal, but you certainly don't see the number of African Americans.
Well, it's the day laborers. Look at the day laborers, and that makes it very easy. Most of the folks standing outside Home Depot and Lowe's and all those other places are, in fact, illegals. And it strikes close to home. My dad was a construction worker. He was a plumber. And I assure you that day laborers do not do the same quality work that skilled American craftsmen do. And at the same time, we're destroying the careers of these skilled American craftsmen who can no longer support themselves or their families.
Let me interrupt here because we are literally out of time. Let me thank Logan for always being with us on Wednesday. He departs for Africa tomorrow for a journey to visit his son. We wish him well. Lowell Ponte, the new book. Tell us about the book where someone could go and purchase it.
Yeah, the new book, The Great Debasement, you don't even need to purchase it. If you're one of the first 1,000 callers to 800-630-1494, we would be happy to give you this 283-page, $20 book at the bookstore, just because we're trying to empower people and give them, control over their own lives. It's a survival guide for economics today. The Great Debasement, 800-630-1494. We'll pay for the book. We'll pay for the postage. We'll pay for the phone call. We just want to put some power back in the hands of the people.
And, Michael, how can they reach you?
Sure, they can reach me through 3 websites, michaelcutler.net, C-U-T-L-E-R, michaelcutler.net. I have another website, talkborder.com, and, of course, I'm a senior fellow with a group known as CAPS, Californians for Population Stabilization. Their terrific website, capsweb.org.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
For more